You'd think after 5 years of marriage, I'd have gotten used to the looks. That flicker of embarrassment in her eyes when someone asked what I did for a living. That tight-lipped smile she gave when I introduced myself as a janitor. Like it was a dirty word. We were standing outside the Grand Meridian Hotel. It was one of those nights, the kind where everyone reeked of perfume, power, and pretense. Elena, my wife, clutched her clutch like it was the only thing grounding her in a world she desperately wanted to belong to. I held out my hand, just to walk in with her. Nothing dramatic. She looked at it like I'd offered her a dead rat. "I'm not walking in next to a janitor," she hissed. Soft enough so no one else could hear, but loud enough to slice clean through me. That wasn't the first time she threw it at me like a curse, but tonight, it landed different. Maybe it was the way she said it. Or maybe it was the fact that I had already seen it coming. I dropped my hand, gave her a half smile, and stepped back. Right. Wouldn't want anyone to think you married down. She smirked, thought she'd won. She sauntered off, hips swaying like she was on a runway, leaving me standing there like the help. And yeah, people noticed. What none of them knew, not her, not the designer-clad parasites milling around the velvet ropes, was that this wasn't my first time at this circus. And I wasn't there just to play the fool. The doorman was about to wave me aside, thinking I was lost. That's when the car pulled up. You know the kind I'm talking about. Not a car. An event. Midnight blue Bentley Mulsanne, purring like a panther with a bank account. Heads turned. Phones came out. Even Elena paused mid-step, craning her neck with the rest of them. The driver stepped out first, opened the door with the kind of reverence normally reserved for royalty. And out stepped him. Lucas Hale. Tech billionaire. Investor. Man who could buy and sell everyone in that ballroom without breaking a sweat. He walked right past the influencers, the CEOs, the socialites. Straight to me. And then he smiled. "There you are," he said. And then he pulled me into a hug. "Been waiting for you, son." The silence was instant. Heavy. Even the music from inside the ballroom seemed to stutter. I didn't say anything. Just smiled, tight, controlled, the way my father taught me. "Elena?" She turned the color of skim milk. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stepped past her without a word. Just brushed her shoulder with mine. Almost lovingly. And then I turned, just once, before following my father through the doors. "Oh," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You coming, Elena? Or are you still worried about being seen with a janitor?" The ballroom was a masterpiece in marble and mirrored walls. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and fractured it across a sea of silk and smug smiles. But none of that mattered, not when every eye was still fixed on me. Correction, us. Lucas Hale wasn't just my father. He was the kind of man who didn't show up unless he wanted something. Which meant tonight wasn't some sentimental reunion. And that's what made it perfect. He clapped a hand on my back and steered me toward the center of the room, nodding to a few stunned guests as we passed. "Time to make a few introductions," he said. "And maybe teach some people a little humility." He didn't mean them. He meant her. I glanced over my shoulder. Elena stood at the entrance, frozen in her Louboutin heels, lips parted like she'd just witnessed the second coming and wasn't sure whether to pray or puke. Her grip on that clutch? White-knuckled now. She was unraveling, strand by entitled strand. Good. I used to think the worst pain was discovering someone you love doesn't actually love you. Turns out, it's worse when you realize they never even respected you. That night she came home complaining about the rent being too low in our building. That was the first crack. When she rolled her eyes at the old janitor, not knowing it was me pulling the night shift just to test our tenant systems. That was the second. But this was the break. Lucas led me over to a circle of men in tuxedos that cost more than my annual salary back when I was just a janitor. He didn't bother with introductions. He just said, "Gentlemen, meet Nathan Hale. My son. My successor." The air tightened like a drumskin. One of the men, Walt Cranston, venture capitalist and old money traditionalist, spilled a bit of his scotch. He covered it with a cough, but not before I saw his eyes dart toward Elena, still rooted near the bar like someone just unplugged her brain. I turned, slowly. "Elena," I called out. Calm. Even. Like I didn't already know her game by heart. Her head snapped up. "This is my wife," I said to the circle, waving her over like I was inviting her to dinner, not a public reckoning. She moved on autopilot, the room watching her every step, judging her for how long she hadn't known who I really was. She came to stand beside me. Smiled, but the tremble in her lips gave her away. Still playing the part, even now. Good. Let's see how long she can keep it up. "My dear," I said, turning to her, "you remember Mr. Cranston?" I believe you once called him a patriarchal fossil with a plantation mentality after that charity gala last year. Her smile twitched. Cranston's bushy eyebrows shot up. Oh, don't worry, I said quickly. She didn't know I'd been offered a seat at his firm's board last fall. I declined, of course. Conflict of interest. Her face flushed red. But it wasn't shame. It was fear. Because in that moment, she realized something important. This wasn't about a party. This was a reckoning. Lucas leaned in with that trademark half-smile of his. She's charming, he said dryly. Reminds me of your mother. He meant that as a threat, not a compliment. And Elena caught it. The room began to buzz again, the moment fading, but not forgotten. The whispers would carry. They always do. Elena tugged at my arm as Lucas drifted off toward a senator with too much ego and not enough votes. What is this? She asked, voice low and tight. You're his son? This whole time? I smiled. Leaned in real close. Yeah. And the janitor thing? I tapped my chest. Still true. Still mine. Bought the entire property management company 6 months ago. I like to know how the floors get cleaned. You'd be surprised what people say when they think you're invisible. She went pale again. Same shade as her overpriced foundation. You lied to me. I tilted my head. No, Elena. You lied to yourself. You married me because you thought I was safe. Easy. Someone you could mold. Control. Be better than. I stepped back. And now? You're just the woman who insulted the heir to a fortune for being a janitor. She followed me through the ballroom like a ghost in stilettos. I could feel the panic rolling off her in waves, every strained breath, every sideways glance, every desperate smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Funny how fast arrogance fades when the truth shows up in a Bentley. I didn't speak to her for a while. I let her stew in the very silence she used to weaponize against me. Back when I'd ask if something was wrong and she'd say, I'm fine, in that voice that always meant the opposite. Now I was fine, and she was unraveling. Lucas eventually slipped away to do what billionaires do, make backroom deals and ruin competitors over champagne flutes. And me? I was standing by the terrace doors, watching the skyline, when she finally cracked. You can't just humiliate me like that. Her voice was sharp, but shaking. I didn't turn. Didn't have to. I just swirled the amber liquid in my glass and said, funny. I don't remember you being worried about humiliation when you called me just a janitor 20 feet from the press wall. That was different. She stepped closer, voice lower now. I didn't know. I thought you were just, beneath you. She flinched. Didn't deny it. And that's when I turned to face her. No more fake smiles. Just truth. Cold and deliberate. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, Elena. Thought maybe, just maybe, you saw something in me besides a stepping stone. But tonight, I let the silence hang between us like a noose. You confirmed it. You didn't marry me for love. You married me for status. She looked away. The glitter of her dress couldn't hide the fact that she suddenly looked very small. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. That's when I laughed. Not bitter. Just done. Elena, you didn't just hurt me. You disrespected me. You tried to erase me. She opened her mouth to say something else, but the music changed, the signal for the honorary toast. Lucas was walking to the center with a mic in hand. Elena, I said, stepping close enough that no one else could hear. I'd suggest you smile. Because when my father starts talking, your life is about to change. She blinked. What do you mean? But I was already walking away. Lucas took the mic, cleared his throat, and with that effortless charisma, launched into his speech. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's not often I gather friends, allies, and admirers. He let that land. To make an announcement. But tonight's different. Tonight, I'm proud to introduce the next chapter in Hale Holdings. Murmurs began. Elena stood behind me, breath hitching. My son, Nathan Hale, has returned. And he's not just returning to the family, he's taking over. Gasps now. Actual gasps. The sound of wine glasses being set down just a little too hard. Lucas kept going. Nathan's vision has always been different from mine. He built his life from the ground up, sometimes literally, as a janitor. But what none of you know is that during those years, he built a shell company, invested in our competitors, created alliances behind the scenes. And tonight, I'm handing him the reins of our real estate division, lock, stock, and skyscraper. Applause. Loud. Uncomfortable. Forced. I stood there, letting the spotlight wash over me. Next to me, Elena looked like she might be sick. People started coming over, congratulating me, praising my humility and discipline and mystery. One man, A hedge fund manager Elena had flirted with at a previous gala, shook my hand and said, "Didn't see this coming." I smiled. Most people don't. Elena stayed quiet through it all. Smiled when people looked. Nodded when I introduced her as my wife. But her grip on my arm was cold, tight, and trembling. Later that night, as the party died down, she asked, "What happens now?" I didn't answer her. Not yet. Because the answer deserved its own moment. And trust me, when it comes, it'll be quiet, precise, and unforgettable. 3 days after the party, I took her to dinner. She hadn't said much since the gala. There was no apology, no self-reflection, just a strained silence broken only by her occasional attempts to talk it through, each more self-serving than the last. She didn't ask how I became the heir to Hale Holdings. Didn't ask why I stayed silent all these years. Because she wasn't interested in the truth. She was interested in how to survive it. The restaurant I picked was quiet, private. Not the kind of place she'd post about on social media, but the kind of place that took your coat with 2 hands and remembered your wine from last time. She dressed the part, always did. Black blouse, sharp collar, red lipstick. Still trying to play the role. Still thinking the right outfit could cover up a rotten core. The waiter brought the menus. She didn't open hers. "I need to know what you're thinking," she said. I set my napkin down. Folded. Neat. Precise. "You really want to know?" She nodded. I leaned forward. "I'm thinking about how I let someone into my life who saw me as furniture. Functional. Invisible. Useful. But never real. That's not fair," she said quickly. Everything I said, before I knew. "Before you knew," I repeated, flat. "Before you thought I was worth something." She opened her mouth to defend herself, then stopped. Because she knew I was right. And that hurt more than any insult I could have thrown at her. "You used to admire how grounded I was," I said. "Said it made you feel safe. Said I reminded you of who you wanted to be." I picked up my glass. "Guess you outgrew that version of yourself." She flinched. "You don't understand how much pressure I've been under," she said. "Trying to keep up appearances, fit in with people like your father, your world. That party, those people." "You married me," I interrupted, "not my world. You just didn't realize I owned it." She stared. I starting to shine, but not with tears. With panic. With the realization that no amount of damage control would fix the fact that she looked down on a man who was always looking right through her. "You made your choice the second you refused to stand next to me that night," I said. "You didn't betray me when you said I was just a janitor. You betrayed me when you believed it." We ate quietly after that. I don't even remember what I ordered. She barely touched her plate. When the check came, I paid it in cash. She watched me slip a generous tip beneath the receipt. For a second, I saw the memory flicker in her eyes, the nights I used to count bills in the car before taking her out. She used to say I was so careful, so thoughtful. Now it looked more like control, like power. And she hated that it was mine. Outside, as the valet brought my car around, she stood beside me, arms folded. "So, what happens now?" she asked. And this time, I answered. "Now." I said. "Now, we play by your rules." She blinked. "You married for status, right? That's what mattered most." She nodded slowly, uncertain. "Good," I said, stepping closer. "Because I've arranged a little get-together. A second party. You'll want to look nice. It's going to be full of your kind of people." "What for?" she asked, brows furrowing. I opened the door, waited for her to sit, and then slid into the driver's seat. "To remind you of something," I said, turning the key. "That everything you thought you married into belonged to a janitor." I held the party at one of our lesser-known properties. Not the penthouse. Not the villa. Just an elegant estate tucked into the hills, private, tasteful, and crawling with the kind of people Elena had always wanted to be seen with. She stepped out of the car like nothing had changed. Like the last week hadn't knocked the wind out of her entire fantasy life. That's the thing about people like her. They don't let go of delusion easily. She wore emerald. Not by accident. It matched the earrings she only pulled out for major events, gifts from me, back when I still thought she saw value in something other than price tags and photo ops. The valet took the car. A doorman greeted her with a quiet "Mrs. Hale." She froze for half a second, long enough for it to register. Not Elena. Not ma'am. Mrs. Hale. The name of the man she once dismissed like a waiter. Inside, the air bust. Not with music. This wasn't that kind of party. This was quieter. Strategic. The kind of gathering where business and reputations were traded in the same breath. My guests were sharp. Investors. CEOs. Founders. The men and women behind the headlines. They wore designer suits and carried three things: wealth, secrets, and long memories. Elena stuck close to me at first. Too close. She was in self-preservation mode, trying to graft herself back into the narrative like she hadn't spent our entire marriage trying to edit me out of it. And then I stepped away. I excused myself to take a call, an excuse she didn't question. I left her on her own, to sink or swim. For the first 10 minutes, she floated. People smiled at her. They saw the dress, the hair, the heels. But then they started to ask questions. So, how long have you and Nathan been married? Oh, were you at the gala last weekend? Wild reveal, huh? What was it like? You know, dating someone undercover. I watched from across the room as the truth began to unravel her mask. Because here's the thing about high society. They don't care what you wear. They care what you knew. And now they knew she didn't know a damn thing. One of my father's business partners cornered her near the drink table. Must have been quite a shock, he said. Imagine, spending years married to a janitor, only to find out he owns half the city. He laughed like it was a joke. But it wasn't. It was a warning. People like him, they smile when they're gutting you. I let it play out for a while. Let her stew in that uncomfortable realization that she'd spent years climbing a ladder she didn't even realize was nailed to my wall. And when she looked up, desperate, searching for me, I stepped out of the shadows. By the time I returned to her side, the damage was already done. Her eyes were wide, her voice tight. She was trying to smile, but the edges kept twitching. I handed her a glass of wine. She took it like medicine. You did this on purpose, she whispered. I turned to her, cool and slow. Did what? She shook her head, laughing bitterly. You knew they'd judge me. They weren't judging you, Elena, I said. They were just seeing you. For the first time. She tried to argue, to spin, to manipulate. But it was over. Not because I exposed her in some dramatic, finger-pointing scene. It ended because the people she lived to impress saw the truth written all over her face. The only thing worse than being embarrassed is being irrelevant. She didn't speak the entire ride home. We didn't speak on the way back. The silence wasn't awkward. It was surgical. Every mile that passed felt like I was carving away the last piece of the illusion she tried to wrap herself in. When we pulled into the driveway, she got out slowly, like she was walking into court, not her own home. Funny thing about that house. She always used to call it her sanctuary. Always told her friends she picked it out. Always gushed about how we bought it together. But she never read the paperwork. Didn't care to. Didn't ask. She just assumed. And assumptions? That's where people like her start to drown. I let her go in first. Watched her heels click across the floors she used to boast about in Instagram stories. Imported oak, she'd say. Custom stone backsplash. All those details she claimed as her own. I walked to the liquor cabinet. Not because I needed a drink. Because she needed to watch me pour one. Calm. Unbothered. In control. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms folded tight. I know what you're doing, she said. Do you? I replied, sipping slow. Because last I checked, you didn't know who I was, what I owned, or who you were married to. Her jaw tensed. You could have told me, she said. I did, I said, taking a seat. Every time I showed up for you. Every time I cleaned up the mess you didn't even know you made. Every time I asked if you were happy, and you smiled and said fine like it was a chore. I leaned forward. You just didn't listen. Because I didn't come with a price tag. She sat too, perching like a bird on the edge of the armchair. The same chair she used to lecture me from about not thinking big enough. And now? It was time for the audit. I opened a drawer in the side table, pulled out a sleek black folder, laid it on the coffee table between us. What's this? She asked. Read it. She hesitated, then opened it. 2 pages in, her face paled. This is the deed to the house, she said, voice thin. My name's not on it. Nope, I said. I bought this place through a shell company. Before we were even engaged. But we made renovations together. We used my design ideas. And I paid for every nail, tile, and vanity sink in this place, I interrupted. You didn't spend a dime. And you never asked where the money came from. She swallowed. I thought, we were building it together. That almost made me laugh. Almost. No, Elena. You were posing in it. I was building it. The folder also held the prenup. Not the copy she skimmed. The one her lawyer never saw. The updated version I had her sign before the wedding. She was too busy choosing linen colors. Too busy flaunting the ring in group chats. Too busy assuming. This version, it protected every asset under shell ownership. meaning me, and nothing under joint. She flipped to the last page, eyes scanning the notarized signature. Hers. You tricked me, she whispered. I smiled. No. I protected myself. You tricked yourself. She stared at the paper like it might catch fire in her hands. Why now, she asked. Why show me this now? Because now you know who you're really married to, I said, standing. And I wanted you to have a front row seat to your own performance. She stood too, wobbling, unsure. But we're still married. She said it like a final play. I nodded slowly. For now.